Hi, I'm Rachel with Patterns and Pixels Canada, and on today's video, I will be working on block 2 of my Symphony quilt, where we are making 11 pinwheel blocks. Let's get started. Here is my month 2 package ready to be opened for the Symphony block of the month. Right. Some of these fabrics look to be the same as what I had last time, but I think a few of these are new. And okay, I've got fabric requirements, and oh, here we go. Block number 2 is a pinwheel, and I need to make 5 of them. 3 of them look like they'll be made with the blues. Then I've got sort of a bluey yellowy, and then another block will have orange, and still that way that piece is so big. So one block will be blue in the orange, one block will be blue with the greens, and oh, must have a lot of this because the third one will be the blue with the pink, and the white looks like it's included in this one. Okay, so same as last time, I'm going to start with best pressing all of my fabric. I use the mister. It gives a nice even coating. It really helps with keeping your fabric nice and straight, especially with all of the points that you get on a pinwheel. I hadn't always been using this. This is maybe the second or third project I've worked on where I've used this. It makes all the difference. So if you haven't started using Best Press, I would highly recommend giving it a try, seeing how you feel about it. But I do find it very helpful. It's sort of, it makes your fabric almost feel like paper. Like it has that sort of rigidness to it. And so that means when you're dealing with tiny little pieces and all of these points, everything stays flat and straight and together the way that you want it for when you feed it through the sewing machine. I did also take what they had given me during month 1 and popped it into a binder. So as I go through this process, I will also cut off little bits of the fabric and glue it onto the cutting chart so that way I know which fabric I'm using as this goes on. And then I'll be adding these finished blocks into my binder for storage as this quilt will take about a year to complete. So by the end of it, the entire quilt will be in here. All right, let's get started. Here's all my fabric. It's been best pressed and then pressed. And I've left it in the order that the labels go in. So my piece on the top here is fabric number 5. And my piece on the bottom is fabric number 16. And then my next step is to get everything cut and ready for sewing. And the instructions are really easy. They've got a box on the side here that tells me for fabric 5 I need to cut a certain size square and how many I need. So I'm going to get all of this fabric cut and lined up across my cutting mat. Then I will follow the instructions on the back to make sure that the right colors are with the right block, as because I'm just making pinwheels for all of these. All of my cuttings will be the same size, all of my units, and so I need to make sure I match up the right units with the right units so that my pinwheels are the correct color to match the pattern. So let's get started with that. I've also brought over a glue stick so that way I can add any of these colors into the chart that I started last month that might not be there already. And that'll be it. All right, let's do the cutting part next. There are all the triangles cut out for these pinwheel blocks. There were quite a few. Now the instructions ask me to sew the 3.5 inch triangles together first before putting them with the larger 4.25. I think the way I'm going to handle this, because I'm making 5 different blocks, I think I'm going to do sort of like an assembly line, and I'm going to get all of the smaller ones sewn to their counterparts. So for example, the first block I do requires 4 of these ones sewn together, whereas the next one needs 4 of this one and the white. So I think what I'll do is I'll go through and I'll get all of those sewn together and sort of sorted into their block, and then I'll go back and sew the larger ones to their corresponding counterparts, again, just to make sure I don't mix anything up. And then the instructions have asked when sewing the smaller ones together that the seams are pressed open. So I'm going to get through all of that and come back to the table before going on to the next step. So I've chain stitched all of my little triangles together. I obviously had to do 2 chains because typically I needed to fill the bobbin partway through. What I'm going to do now for this part to keep my life organized, I know that 1, 2, 3, 4 are one block, and then the next 4 are the next block going down the chain, and all of these need to be stitched open. So I'm going to keep everything together. I'll find the first 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and separate them. And I would like to set the seam on all of these before I press them open. So I'm going to get the 4 together and just give them a little press while they're still closed and put them to the side. And I'll do that for all of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, until I have 11. Am I making 11 blocks? I think I said 11. Until I have all 11 together in their little groups of 4. Then I'll go back and open them all up, press them open, and make stacks of all of them. So that way I can keep everything together and I don't end up mixing and matching my block, because the last thing I want to do is find out that I've done that and then I have to unpick seams and fix things. All right, let me get through all of these and we'll get on to the next step. There are all of my first units sewn and ready to go with a few extra pieces. Now the next job is to sew the larger pieces to them. And as an example, piece number 6, this big green one over here, is going to be attached to the ones that are both blue. and it will come along the bottom like this. And that'll be it. That'll be that block done. Once I have 4 of them made, then they get stitched together. Or sorry, that'll be that unit done. Once I have 4 of them made, they'll then be stitched together into a larger block. So green goes here. Then we have the white and blue is with the dark one. Yellow is here. And orange is... this one has 2 sets. The blue and the yellow are used in 2 different blocks. Yes. Pink, you are used with, I think this one. Okay, so I'll get all these units made up, and then we can stitch them together in blocks. Have all of my blocks, my units, made and ready to sew into the block. And they've got, I've got a couple steps here. So the first step, of course, is going to be to trimming these down. And I love this pattern because it's given me a much larger block than I need. I only need 3.5 inches, which you can see right there, which means I've got a lot of fabric to work with in case I've made any mistakes, which of course I haven't. I wouldn't have made any mistakes, none whatsoever. Once I have that trimmed, the next job is to sew them together, so these 4 units together into their larger block. And it does say that I should pay attention to the larger triangles to make sure that my pinwheels are all spinning the same way. So I'm just going to turn this one to match the picture they have shown here. Okay, they're all going to spin. My eye sees this as they're all spinning to the right or clockwise if I'm following the big ones going around. So I'm going to get this lovely stack of blocks, units, trimmed down, and then I will get them into their corresponding blocks so I can sew our seams together. I'm suspicious, the pattern specifically asked for me to press my seams open. I'll have to see what ends up happening in the center here if I need to fan or twirl the seam so that it lays a little bit flatter. I'll wait and see what happens when I actually come to stitching it. But that will be the next step. Trimming and sewing, which are kind of the 2 main steps of quilting, aren't they? After a day of sewing, I have finally finished my pinwheel blocks. Here, though, I only actually have 10, and I'm supposed to have 11. And that was because I had a slight cutting mishap with the pink blocks. And so now I have to decide how I'm going to solve the problem. What I did, those 3 were trimmed fine. This one, I was not paying attention. And I did not line up this line with the corner. And it should be lined up with the corner. Which means when I put this block down, instead of having my points all come nicely together in the center, I have this sort of overlap of the pink. Now, this is a block of the month project, which means the fabric has been provided to me by Creek Bank in Mountain Forest. And I have a couple of options on how to solve this problem. Number one, easiest, I can phone up Creek Bank and say, I've made a mistake. Please cut me some more fabric, and I can go in and get it. And that, to be honest, was my first thought. Then I thought, well, what happens if I just stitch it together the way it is? And I think it's really going to bother me if this center bit doesn't come together in a nice point like it's supposed to. To me, that looks like a mistake. Whereas other things, other mistakes that I make, I sometimes look at and think, actually, that makes it unique to me. This doesn't look like that. So I then thought, okay, I can go into Creek Bank and get the fabric, but for me, that's about an hour's drive just to get there. Although I live in the country, so everything seems to be about an hour's drive to get there. I then thought, okay, I like doing these projects that are block of the months because it's a nice way to handle a big quilt. But I don't like that my work is going to look exactly the same as everybody else, because not only do we have the same pattern, we have the same fabric. So I usually change something, and I thought, okay, this is my opportunity to change something. So maybe I actually just go into my stash and choose fabric from there. I think I might be able to save the light blue and the pink and just change the dark blue on the blocks for this particular one, or for the dark blue on the units for this particular block. I could also just do all of the colors different. These are batiks. I do have batiks. Most of mine are sort of in the browns and beiges, but I bet if I dug through I could find some that were a bit more colorful. Nothing's stopping me from using some of my other fabrics, some of my sort of cottons, but that might make that block stand out even more. I don't know, and you won't know until you try. I'm a little bit tempted to make my own block anyway, and then maybe decide if I'm going to pick up more fabric from Creek Bank. I'm not really sure. Comment in below to let me know what you think, and especially if you're an experienced quilter and you've run into this sort of problem before. Is it better that I just buy replacement fabric and fix it, or is this an opportunity for me to be creative with my blocks? Ignoring this one, I'm just gonna put it aside over here. The rest of them were lovely, and they came out just fine. Probably because I did that one first and noticed my mistake and then was very scared about sewing together the rest of them. But they were absolutely fine. All of my points have come together quite nicely. I do think best pressing really helps. I also used pins quite heavily to make sure that my centers lined up, my points in my center lined up as well as they could. So for now, these ones will get stacked together, labeled, and then I will put them into my new binder after the blocks that we made last month. So they'll go in here with their sheet, and then we're ready for block number 3 to come out. All right, if you've enjoyed watching my videos and you'd like to see some more of the work that I do, you know what to do. Hit that like, subscribe, and bell notification. Bye. As I was tidying up after having finished making 10 of my pinwheel blocks, I had a lot more scrap fabric than I had anticipated having, and I'm very excited by it because if you're following me on Instagram or Facebook, you know that I've decided to enlarge my charm quilt before submitting it into the show that's happening in at the end of May, beginning of June. And I can use the fabric from today's work in that project, which is good because I was starting to run out of my own scraps. With this charm project, we've been told to only use a fabric once. And so it's very scary to think that every single piece of fabric in here has only been used once. And what I'm doing is adding 3 more rows down to the bottom, which is quite a lot of fabric. So the last few rows in my charm quilt are going to have fabric from my Symphony quilt, which excites me very much. I'd like to be able to look at it and know what the different pieces of fabric are from. I know you can see on the camera this block. I'm not sure if you can see the block that's up in the top corner here. This is from Mom's Reach for the Star quilt that she's working on. I've said on Instagram and Facebook before that it's difficult having 2 quilters in one house when we only have one design wall. So she's not in here right now, and I quickly took her Reach for the Stars quilt down so I could put my charm quilt up so that I could do this. And as soon as I'm finished, I'll take mine down and put hers back up. We really should invest in a second design wall, but I have no other wall in the house that I can put the design board up against because they'll have furniture in front of them. So we'll need to think of something. Or one of us needs to switch hobbies. Something like that. Anyway, so I'm going to get this fabric sewn into blocks right now for this before I forget and before I accidentally use something twice when I shouldn't. And then this quilt will be on display in about a month, 2 months. Yay! So you remember earlier in the video when I had typed in that there actually had been several mistakes made in this block? These are the finished blocks for month 2, minus that sort of pinky one that I still need to figure out what to do with. And they're wrong. So just take a moment and have a look. Do you think you can figure out what the mistake is? When I was editing the video together, so that I could post it onto YouTube, for whatever reason, something caught my eye. So I came dashing back into the sewing palace to check my blocks against the pattern. And I read the pattern wrong. This was the first one I made, because this is the first one on the instructions that you're asked to make. This is the only one that's correct. On this one, the light blue fabric is on the outside, and the dark blue fabric is inside, making that square. And I just did that for all of them. Unfortunately, on all of these ones, the light blue fabric was supposed to be inside, so that these 3 would all have light blue squares in the center. Instead, I have a white one and 2 yellow. Very frustrating. Entirely my own fault. The way the instructions are laid out, it showed a picture of this one with these colors. And it did say, be mindful that you put your fabrics in the right spot. And so when I came to making all of these ones, I just sort of made sure that the blue was always on that right-hand side as I went through. I didn't actually look at the diagram that had the numbered fabrics on them to notice that it had been flipped. So, it bothers me because it is a mistake. However, as you know, if you've watched my videos before, I do like my quilts to look a little bit different than other people's if we've just done something where it's a block of the month and we all have the same fabric. So, my blocks now look different than everybody else's. I'm not saying they're going to stay like this. I'm going to leave them like this for right now. And in 12 months time, when I've got all the blocks made and I'm putting them up on the design wall to get them together for the quilt, if I find for whatever reason that I don't like the way it looks with my flipped fabric choices, then yes, I'll take them apart and resew them. It would be tricky because I've already squared these up. So when I resew them, I would have to be very, very sure that I end up at the exact right size because I would have no leeway, no wiggle room. I just wanted to show you that in case you were going to use my video to help you make your own Symphony quilt. Don't do what I did. Look at the diagram very carefully. The center squares on these three are supposed to be light blue. Did you want cuddles? Oh, I'm all finished now. You can have cuddles. Say hi to the internet. Hello, internet. Yes. Mama loves you.